Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're cutting through the noise and looking at the actual mechanics of why index funds are, hands down, the absolute best tool for building real, lasting wealth. You know, it is so easy to get totally distracted by complex charts, short-term trends, and all that endless Wall Street jargon. But the data? The data shows that the best way to make your money work for you is actually the absolute simplest. So let's dive right in and explore the undeniable math behind passive investing and exactly why it consistently crushes almost everything else over the long haul.
Here's our quick roadmap for today. First, the Wall Street myth. Second, what are index funds? Third, beating the financial professionals. Fourth, the power of compounding. And finally, time over timing.
We're kicking things off with Warren Buffett, arguably the most successful investor in history, because he perfectly captures our entire focus today. He says, and I quote, "Attempting to pick times to buy and sell stocks is a mistake for 99% of the population." Just think about that for a second. That is a massive statement coming from a billionaire whose entire life revolves around the stock market. The wealthiest living investor is flat out telling us that trying to actively trade every single day to build serious wealth isn't just unnecessary, it's an actual mistake.
Which brings us to Section 1, the Wall Street myth and why cash is not king.
Right, so there's a pretty brutal mathematical reality to just parking your cash in a traditional bank savings account or a CD. I mean, we've all been taught that keeping your money safely tucked away in a bank is the responsible thing to do, right? Because it feels totally insulated from risk. You might earn a yield of, anywhere from 0.1% to maybe 2% in a typical environment. But here is the silent wealth killer, inflation. If inflation is running at 4% and your bank is only paying you 1%, you are mathematically guaranteed to lose purchasing power every single year. You aren't actually playing it safe at all. You're actively bleeding the value of your money over time.
To put that into perspective, let's look at the Rule of 72. It's the simple mathematical concept that tells you exactly how long it takes to double your money. If you keep your cash in a bank earning a, let's say, generous 1% return, it is going to take you 72 years to double your capital. 72 years! At that rate, maybe your great-great-grandkids will see a benefit, but you certainly won't build wealth in your own lifetime. But contrast that with the historical average of the stock market. At an 8% return, it takes just 9 years to double your money. This foundational math right here proves exactly why passive investing is infinitely superior to hoarding cash.
Moving on to Section 2. What are index funds? The ultimate solution.
So what actually is an index fund? Basically, it's a passively managed group of investments. Instead of trying to pick the quote-unquote right single stock, you own a tiny percentage of an entire market. There's this fantastic real estate analogy from our source material that just makes this click instantly. Imagine owning 1,000 apartment buildings, and someone offers to sell you one entire building for $1,000. If something goes wrong with that one specific building, like a fire, bad tenants, maybe a collapsed roof, boom, you lose your money. But what if, instead, you could invest that exact same $1,000 and get a 0.1% ownership slice of all 1,000 apartment buildings? That is literally exactly how an index fund operates. You capture an averaged return based on the whole shebang, spreading out your risk beautifully.
Because look, when you buy one single stock, you are taking on some serious concentrated risk. You are totally exposed to single CEO drama. We all know how it goes. A CEO hops on social media, says something reckless, triggers an SEC investigation, and your investment absolutely tanks. But if you buy an S&P 500 index fund, you're buying a fractional piece of the 500 largest publicly traded companies in the United States. Even if one company completely goes under, you have 499 others working overtime to pull the average back up. It gives you massive diversification, incredibly low overhead fees, and totally removes that single-point failure risk. Let's hit Section 3, beating the financial professionals, myth versus reality.
The data here is honestly staggering. Over a 15-year period, 95% of active portfolio managers completely failed to outperform a standard index fund. Let that sink in. 95%. Keep in mind, these are the brightest minds in the financial sector. We're talking about individuals who attended Ivy League schools, who deeply understand complex macroeconomics, and who literally dedicate their entire waking lives to analyzing market trends and stock charts. And yet, 95% of them cannot beat the baseline market average over the long term. It really puts into perspective just how futile it is to try and actively outsmart the broader market.
And this whole dynamic is perfectly captured in a pretty famous wager. Warren Buffett literally bet a collection of elite hedge fund managers $1 million that they could not beat a standard low-fee Vanguard index fund over a 10-year period. And guess what? Buffett won handily.
A simple, passively managed index fund absolutely crushed the incredibly complex, high-fee, actively managed hedge funds. It's this fantastic piece of modern financial history that proves you absolutely do not need to pay exorbitant fees to professional day traders. The remarkably boring, highly efficient index fund simply wins the marathon.
All right, Section 4, the power of compounding, doing the heavy lifting.
Albert Einstein reportedly called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world, and you're about to see why. Prepare yourself for this number, $36 million. In our source material, they talked about a 31-year-old caller who had actually saved up $500,000 but was entirely risk-averse, keeping it all in cash and low-yield CDs, earning around 2%. Well, the financial experts ran the projection, if she kept it in that CD until age 67, she'd retire with about $1 million. Not bad, right? But wait, if she invested that exact same $500,000 into a broad market index fund, assuming a historical average return of 12%, by age 67 it would grow to an unbelievable $36 million. By playing it strictly safe in the bank, she was mathematically leaving $35 million on the table. That is the undeniable gravity of long-term compound growth.
And this compounding cycle works in a really simple three-step process. First, the overall value of the index fund goes up over time as the economy and corporate earnings grow. Second, many of these companies pay you cash dividends, so they're literally distributing a portion of their profits directly to you just for being a shareholder. And third, and this is absolutely the vital mechanism here, you automatically reinvest those dividends to buy even more shares of the fund. It's like your money is having babies, and then those babies go out and make you even more money. The cycle just continuously accelerates without you having to lift a single finger.
Section 5. Time over timing. The actionable strategy.
So if you're looking for the most widely adopted, highly efficient approach to passive investing, you've got to look at the three-fund portfolio. It is exactly as straightforward as the name implies. Fund number 1 is a total U.S. stock market index. Fund number 2 is a total international stock market index. And fund number 3 is a total bond market index. By holding just these three assets, you achieve the broadest possible diversification across largely uncorrelated global markets, and you do it all at the absolute cheapest expense ratio. It requires zero active stock picking, takes just a few minutes to configure, and then you just simply continue to allocate capital into it over time. Set it and forget it.
Now, you might be wondering, okay, but what if the market is at an all-time high right now? Shouldn't I wait for a crash or correction before putting my money in? Well, a fascinating study by Charles Schwab looked at exactly this, market timing strategies, and they found that in 74% of scenarios, an investor is financially better off deploying their capital immediately and holding for the long term rather than keeping cash on the sidelines trying to perfectly time the market bottom. Because nobody, and I mean literally nobody, can consistently predict the short-term macroeconomic movements of the market. The golden rule is incredibly clear and mathematically sound. Time in the market always beats timing the market.
So, let's leave off today with a final provocative question. Is your money working hard to build your wealth, or is it just making your bank rich? Because right now, if your capital is just sitting idle in a traditional savings account, your bank is taking it, investing it, and generating a massive yield off your labor. It is time to take ownership of that leverage. By utilizing this simple, low-cost, incredibly powerful mechanism of index funds, we can bypass all the Wall Street noise, harness the exponential math of compound interest, and truly rewrite our financial futures. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and until next time, keep learning and keep growing.